good evening. I'm Rick Dancer. Welcome to Get Real with Rick Dancer. Good to have you here. We have a fun conversation tonight. I had a friend. Well, let me tell you who our sponsors are first, and we'll be playing some ads in there, and then I'll kind of tell you the history of this show and how it came about. So our sponsors tonight, Chris Dental Family Dentistry, where everyone is welcome. They also do dentures, and Dr. Bratlin will be on here to have a short little moment on a commercial kind of to talk with you about what that's all about. He's one of our sponsors. And then Albert Taylor. Mary will be here from Albert Taylor, an organization. I love their tagline. It's Endless Possibilities. And they work with and create amazing lives for people in Eugene and Springfield who have different abilities, or what used to be called disabilities. But what we've discovered through time is that describes all of us. All of us are disabled in some way, and theirs just happens to be more noticeable until you get below the skin. And then you find out the amazing people that they are. And what they're always looking for is people to work with them. It's hard enough to get employees right now. Albert Taylor is if you saw during the pandemic that you want a job that's meaningful instead of just a job that pays you money. This one does both. It pays you money, but it's meaningful. You go home at the end of the day and you realize the impact you had on a person's life, and they will impact your life like you can never believe. So here's how this came about. One of my regular viewers came on and said, "Hey, I know this guy named Jack Rady, and you really got to talk to him." Now I'm just using this guy's terms, Jack. So you don't care. I mean, you'll have fun with this. He goes, he's super, super liberal. And I said, "Oh, well, wow. How about that in Oregon, huh?" And he goes, "No, you really should talk to him because he just has some great ideas. I meet with him. He's very open. He listens." And I started thinking, what we need is to have more open conversations with people that we may not completely agree with. Because I always say this, my wife and I don't agree, and we manage to do things and come up with ideas. So I think it can happen and it can be done. So I've been talking to Jack. We've been kind of having conversations on the phone and discussing things, what we're going to talk about, and we're just going to let this thing flow. And if you guys have any questions, put them on the comment section if you're on the right medium here, that you can do that. Otherwise, you can always send them back to me as well, and we can get those for another trip. So I'm going to bring Jack on. So Jack, here's Jack. How you doing, Jack? Can you hear me?
I'm doing all right. So I hear you okay. You were cutting in and out before, but now you're fine.
Okay, we'll hope that it stays and sticks. So Jack is in Eugene, Oregon. And Jack, give people a little bit of your history, just the Reader's Digest condensed version, but to give them an idea of your history.
Yeah, I grew up in Chicago. I was raised by my mother, who was a refugee from Nazi Germany. I guess my first insight that something was odd about the society in which I lived was when I went with my mother. I must have been about 5. And we stopped at one of those newsstands they used to have with an old blind guy selling newspapers, old black man. And I saw his lunch. And his lunch was a mason jar about half full of bacon grease with a little bit of bits of bacon in it, not many. And then we went downtown. We drove downtown past the yacht harbors on Lake Michigan. And I thought, something odd here. We did our shopping on 63rd Street, which was one of the South Side ghettos. And within a mile in the other direction, as the numbers went down, so I guess that'd be toward downtown, there were some mansions. Some very wealthy people living 10 blocks from real poverty. And I thought, that's odd. Why is that like that? Is that a reasonable way that we should all be? These people have too much, these people have not enough. Couldn't we, And I grew up during the 50s, went to 4 different high schools in Eureka and in Chicago, Eureka, Bainbridge Island, Washington, and then Merced, California, where I graduated from high school. Excuse me about the phone ringing.
No, it's okay.
I'm hoping my wife will get that, but she does not seem to be. Let me. Okay.
This is life,
Um,
man.
yeah, it is. In the summer of '63, I took a Greyhound bus from Merced to um, Greensboro, North Carolina, by way of New Orleans, as part of a Unitarian youth group. There was international conference on prejudice in North Carolina, where we did a little low-level civil rights work integrating the local swimming pool. But it was it was Greensboro, which was not a really scary place to be in 1963. There were some really scary places, but I saw segregation.
Right.
I saw New Orleans. The thing that stuck in my mind ever since was a laundromat. And there was a sign in the window, and the sign read, "Whites only, servants in uniform allowed."
What did you think?
Think about that one. What in the hell? You are not allowed in here unless you are showing that you are someone's employee and subservient to them. But it's okay then if you're in. So it's not the fact that you're in and you're black. It's only, yeah. We made a point of drinking at every colored water fountain that the bus stopped at. And being 16 at the time, was just lucky.
So
We
where,
had
Jack,
no trouble.
where did that come from for you, in you? Because obviously this was it born in you, or do you think that's just something you noticed as a
My
human being?
family were, I think, what you would call progressive. I was raised to believe that people are equal, that people are the same, that we are not better because we're a different color than somebody else, that people's poverty is not because they did something wrong and deserve it, and other people's wealth because they're good and they deserve it. But that was the way that things were set up, and that, I should treat everyone as a human being and not think of myself as better than anyone, and to look for justice in the world. Um, when I was in Greensboro, I then had to get home back to Merced, and there was a bus going up to a Unitarian summer camp near DC. And from there, I could maybe get another ride somewhere to get on a bus to come back home. And while in that camp, which was in, I think, Baltimore or near it, there was an opportunity to go to the March on Washington.
Oh, so did you go?
Really?
Of course you did.
And, well, you have to have your mother's permission. So I called up, and she said yes. Although I had made up my mind, if she said no, I was going to say she said yes. So I went, and I saw 250,000 people, joyous, feeling their strength. The three biggest groups were from the United Auto Workers, the NAACP, and the Catholic Church were the most evident by their costuming. We were second tree back on the left side if you're looking from the speaker's stand, and I heard all the speeches. I saw all the looks on people's faces, that look of just sheer joy. And yes, we are going to finally get this right. This nation is going to get right. And that energy has stayed with me ever since. I will never forget that. I've been in many demonstrations since then, organized some mighty big ones myself. And but that was the start. And that was seeing the beauty of America, that the weakest people in the country with the least resources, the least education, the least influence, the least assets of any kind, by their courage, by their faith, by their willingness to believe that what was written down in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence was for real, even though it hadn't been up to now, and that by doing the right thing, they could change it. And that, is there another lesson we need more than that?
So as a young man, you told me earlier when we were talking, you came away from that and it gave you great hope that we could change things. Do you still feel that way?
You know,
When you see what's going on in America today, do I've never seen anything. I remember, as a more right leaning sort of guy in Eugene, when I could have these kind of conversations with people, and during the pandemic and after that, and I think the Trump things and the years of whether you voted for him or not, you still got lumped into a container with him, and I feel like we're not talking anymore. Like we don't. It's troubling to me.
It's very troubling to me too. And I'll tell you, I have made an effort throughout because every school I was in a minority, often, maybe three, sometimes one. And I'm damned if I was going to shut up. I still had my views, and I would talk to anybody about them who cared to. And as I said, I went to 4 different high schools, and I learned from that, if I put my flag up, I was a new kid in town, I put my flag up, those who were interested in what I was on about would come over to find out what it was. Otherwise, I'd never find them.
Right.
So I've never been quiet about my views, but I have not been hesitant to talk to people with I'm a military historian. And for a draft refuser and a anti-war activist throughout the entire Vietnam War, I have an awful lot of friends who are either retired or a few, I think, who are still active duty. I became a war game designer and publisher. In fact, my first game has just been republished to great acclaim just this year.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
It took 15 years of work, but it's a triumph. And so I've been associated with a lot of people of very right-wing views. I was invited at one point to Montgomery, Alabama, to the Air Force Command and Staff School to participate in a conference put on by the Air Force. And at that time, I wore a red star on my hat. And I said, I don't want to support your mission in any way. And, I would feel like a mongoose at a Cobra convention. And they said, no. We want you for your unique perspective. And I said, okay.
Unique to who?
And I flew in first to Atlanta and then to Montgomery, and I was jet lagged, and I was wondering where my dinner was coming from and how I was getting a ride to my motel. And I was looking around the officers club, and there were some old guys giving us the stink eye because a lot of war game designers who'd been invited are pudgy and hirsute and not your usual officers club types. And I was thinking, oh boy, I want a wall to put my back to. This is a bad spot to be in. And here comes this Marine Corps colonel, one eye slightly off into the distance, chest full of fruit salad. And he looks at my tag and goes, Rady? Jack Rady? My God, I played your first game until the counters fell apart. Here, I want to shake your hand. He's a dear friend now. We correspond regularly. He's come out and stayed with us. At the time, he was head of the Marine Corps Intelligence School.
Wow.
And it turns out he's more of an anti-imperialist than I am. At that conference, I got up. They wanted my unique perspective. Okay. This is a conference of like 300 or more Air Force and other service officers, mostly American, some NATO, and maybe 50, 60 war game designers. And the idea was to get together and exchange ideas. And so every time a speaker would be, I'd have my hand up, I got a question, sir. That was a great presentation, but isn't the question not, can we do that, but should we do that? Because yes, precision munitions can hit targets, and then you have dead people in broken buildings, and a lot of people really pissed off at us. Does that actually gain us anything?
Right.
And a colonel jumped out of his seat, ran. I mean, I'm not making this up. Ran across the floor, the stadium, to where I was to shake my hand, saying, "No one has ever asked that question here before. Thank you."
So is that? Should we be asking more questions on both sides?
Oh yeah, and we should listen to each other.
There you go.
We should listen to each other. I got involved in police reform. I've been watching the police, and It's been mutual for a
Okay,
very
do this.
long time.
Do this for me. Let me run two, because this is where I want to go. Let me run two ads really fast, and we'll come back. And
Good.
I want to. This is what I want to hear.
I
About.
run off the map.
One of the biggest things for people that I have supported, one of their complaints has always been, why do they talk to me like I'm a baby? Why can't they talk to me like they're talking to you? And they're absolutely right. They're very smart. The people we support are very intelligent. And so when you talk to them as if you're talking to a small child, it's offensive. And so, yeah, I think educational videos, bringing that here to show everybody would help. They know that they're not perfect. They know that they're special. That's what some of them say to me, at least, that they know they're special because they don't really like to refer to themselves as having disabilities. They like to say they're special. And so they know this, they're aware of that. They don't want the community to throw that back at them because it's perceived negatively when that happens. So having that education to understand that they're just like you and I.
This guy's really good. Shannon is the best denturist I've ever seen. He was coming in on Fridays, and now he's coming on Fridays and Monday. But everybody that leaves with him, he always has me come. He goes, "Come here," because I'll come in on Fridays. He's like, and they look absolutely beautiful. The patients, there's hardly any redos. Like I wish, and I probably will advertise a lot just to get him some momentum. But he is so good. He's the best denturist I've ever met. Yeah, his outcomes, because you make a denture and they don't fit very well, they don't look very good. He's awesome. Not only does he take the impressions, there's a lot of art to taking impressions, but he also makes the dentures. He's fantastic. I love having him. He's made my life a lot easier because I don't have to worry about dentures anymore.
And we continue our conversation with Jack Rady. We're going to go into police reform. And Jack, you did a great job when the computer lost you and you went and signaled back on. Damn, I was sitting here going, I should pop on and just say, Jack, go back and start over. But you got it, man. You got a candle there. That's perfect.
It worked. It worked.
So talk to me. You've been looking at, I'll just start off with my comment. I was in Eugene and I was in Portland this last weekend. And I noticeably saw that it was cleaned up a little bit. It wasn't so much, there were so many unhoused and homeless people on the streets and everything in both communities. I think somebody said, oh, it's because of the Rose Festival. I think it's different than that. I think people are starting to realize we need to help, not just leave people out on the streets. And this is one of the places you and I have some agreement on exactly, as one of the many places, I hope. Mental health this is a crisis. And if there's a lot of crises, but that's a huge issue for every state, for my state, Montana, for all of us.
What I've noticed when we first moved to Eugene in '99, there were protests about homelessness and there not being adequate shelter and nothing available for people. And a group of people sat down at the Wayne Morris Plaza, and the city manager came out and said, no, you guys don't need to do this. You could go and stay at, well, no, that one's full. You could stay, no, they don't accept young men. You could stay, well, no, that one's not available anymore. You could, they got a waiting list. And he had nothing. He was saying, no, we've got stuff for you. And when he looked down his list, he found they had nothing. And then for the last, 15, 16 years, my impression has been here we go again. There has been a process of, we'll hire some consultants and do a study. And then after a year or so, we'll get the results of the study, and then we'll talk about it for a while. And then we'll realize the problem is still a problem. And we might hire some more consultants and do another study. But the last few years, some money has gotten loose. And there has been actually some investment in housing for the homeless. And as a result, when they've been clearing out camps, rather than just telling people, you got to get out of here, they say, here's where you can go, and we'll take your stuff there for you if you like. We have a place for you. It's still woefully inadequate, but there's more.
So why do
Yeah.
you think, I guess, where do we get to a point where I think sometimes I'll bring up things when because I've gone down when I was there, and for years I've gone and asked people, and they said, why are you coming to Eugene? And they said, well, because, you guys have everything here we need. We don't have to go anywhere. And then I don't think Measure 110 helped at all in bringing people there. But when we try to have these kind of discussions, I get blackballed as an anti-homeless person, and I am anti-homeless. I don't think anybody should be, but that's not the kind that we're getting. How do we get to a place where we bring in different ideas and say, what if some of the things I think are causing this are actually true, and some of the things you think are causing it, rather than it's just, no, that's not the answer. We have the answer over here. It seems like we've lost that ability to bring everybody into the conversation and not discount them just like because we're in different parties or we come from different perspectives. You know what I mean?
One thing is we have to agree on facts, and because facts are concrete, although they can be selected, and we all know all these things.
I find facts can be very much manipulated. That's the problem.
They can be, but if you don't start there and you don't aim there, you can't come up to any useful conclusions.
Right.
And the one that I'm aware of is that the overwhelming majority of homeless people in Lane County and in Eugene were not homeless people before they became homeless, but they were residents of Eugene and Lane County. We are not flooded with outsiders who are most of the 3,000 to 4,000 people homeless in this area. Almost all of them come from here. It's not because necessarily they're mentally ill or drug users or whatever. It's because rents are insanely high. I'm so glad I was able to afford a house. The thought of paying rent and having it, okay, it's going to go up 30%, it's going to go up 50%. What would one do?
How can you even afford to buy a home? Anymore, it's like this isn't even middle. I don't even know if there is a middle income, and to think, how do you ever invest and then start building a nest egg or something that, because I think that's where a lot of young people, and you and I were talking about that today too, that have very little hope that they're the first generation that are going to probably do worse than you and me.
Yeah. The system is failing. The system is failing to provide what the people who live in the society need.
What is that for you? What is that for you? What do you think that is?
For me, that is, it revs me right up, because the assets of the society have not fallen away and disappeared. As a society, we are not poorer. What has happened is a dramatic change in the distribution of wealth. We did not used to have billionaires. We did not used to have people who could send a Corvette into space because they thought it would be cool and they can afford it. At the same time, just the roads need to be fixed. The schools are inadequate. The medical care and what it costs are insane. Mental health care has practically disappeared. The jail is our main provider of mental health care in this county. That's insane. And it all requires resources to deal with. And here I have difficulty with my conservative brothers and sisters.
Right.
Because generally, and I don't want to, tell you what someone else says, because that's for them to say. But in general, the stance of more conservative political forces has been cut the taxes on the wealthy, cut the social benefits. And without the resources, we have a situation where if someone is mentally ill and unable to function successfully in society, can't keep an apartment, can't keep a job, can't keep their paperwork straight so that even if they're on disability, they can remember where their ID and their check went. They're on the street. They're disoriented. The laws mean nothing to them. They don't understand them or care about them. If they're hungry, there's food. I'm going to take some and eat it, of course. And next thing you know, they're in the jail. We need resources to take care of such people. They need to be taken care of. They cannot take care of themselves. Whether they made bad decisions which got them there, whether they had a traumatic brain injury from a fall, whether they are veterans who've gone through that set of stresses, nonetheless, when you come down to it, they need help. And either the help is available or it is not available.
See, now, your original comment when you're saying that a lot of some conservatives are thinking you to don't tax the wealthy. I don't know anybody in my circle of people that I would hang around. I think everybody should be taxed. I guess where we have a difference is with corporations, maybe putting more money into the community. Do you think that we should force that? And I don't know if forces that you do. See,
yeah, here's an example.
So how do we
Uncle Phil? Okay,
but
we
here's
have housing in Eugene. Oh, do we have housing? We have magnificent housing. We have gleaming steel and glass structures for housing ducks. Okay, duck basketball players, duck football players, duck baseball players. But Uncle Phil has said, he told Kitty Piercy this, I will give anything to the University of Oregon. I will give not a penny to the city of Eugene. Now, Uncle Phil has his millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, however many millions. And he can do with it as he damn well pleases. And if we have a gleaming steel and glass structure just for athletes to study in, with the very finest of fixings, and technical details, and we don't have enough housing for people living on the streets, surely we could say, Uncle Phil, 20% of what you got, you don't have anymore because society really needs it, and you didn't make it yourself. Those tennis shoes were not made by your hands. That value you gained because of your legal position. Well, we just passed a law. It's a tax law, and it changes your legal position. Some of that money is not for you to dispose of, and we're going to spend it on things we actually need. Because if we don't, we could raise the property taxes a little more, right? Until you drive the people on Social Security out into the street. That's not a real good place to raise those resources from. Billionaires, we could tax Mr. Bezos and Mr. Buffett and Mr. Gates and Mr. Zuckerberg and the rest and Mr. Musk 50% of what they own, and they would still be the richest men in the world. I think they'd be okay. Don't you?
See, the only thing with Phil that is for me, there's another side to his, donations. I had cancer, and the treatment I got was experimental, and it was only available because of Phil Knight's donations to OHSU Hospital of $1 billion. And so I look at that and I'm thinking, well, it's not like he doesn't care. And I understand he has this money. I think it's going to be hard to get people. When do you decide who's the wealthy one and who doesn't? Is there a certain price tag that we put on there? Like if you have over $1 billion, I don't know, Jack. So you go back to the original question is, how do we come to some kind of area where we can go, what about personal responsibility as well? We've got 7 million men in America right now between the ages of 25 and 54 who are choosing not to work. A small percentage of those are people who can't. I mean, they're disabled, they have disabilities or something like that. But a big chunk of them are people that are they're just fed up and they're not going back to work. So how do,
Really?
I want to take, yeah.
I'm so curious about the source of this statistic.
That is out there. I can't quote you who it was that said it, but that figure has been, I've seen it in multiple articles. That
I
is
have my
there's
doubts
and there's
about the
10
number
million and there's
using
10
work.
million unfilled jobs in America right now, and we have 7 million. Those are just the men that are choosing not to work. So when does it become?
Well,
You
hold
know,
it. Whoa. I've been unemployed. I've been laid
oh,
off.
I only
More
well,
than-
I have a couple times too.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
wasn't a pleasant experience.
No. How did you make ends meet?
Well, fortunately for me, I was unemployed for 6 weeks and took the unemployment because that's the only way I could get going. And
Yeah,
then
worked out.
I got my
You paid in
I
for
found
it. You
another
might as well
job.
take it
I took a really shitty, horrible job that was it was very humbling. It was one of those times in my life where you go, okay, this isn't what I want to do, but this is what I get to do. And did that for about 9 months to a year, and then finally got back on my feet and got a better job. So kind of got into what I was going to do for a career, but
I have a hard
wasn't
time
pleasant.
imagining a lot of people who are choosing to be unemployed as opposed to working.
Okay, well that's
not
where
a credible figure.
well it is a credible.
Right. You may be right. I may be wrong, but I have a hard time starting a conversation based on that. I'm not sure that's actually true.
But see, that's
I
what
don't
happens,
think-
Jack. But that's what happens all the time when we try to have, not you and me, but when people try to have these conversations. I see this all the time as discredit. And I'm not saying this in a mean way to you, but I get this from people that go, well, I saw that figure too, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, when do we start talking about other things besides the same old, because I could say, I don't think that it's really the responsibility of all the billionaires to do what you're asking to do. And I guess we are
sure.
having a conversation like this. It makes me less hopeful that we're ever going to find some common ground between people like yourself and myself. I don't, because we can sit here and discount people's figures and their numbers. But if
I'm not
that
saying
is,
you're wrong, I'm saying it sounds unlikely to me. And if I, not knowing where it comes from, I have no basis on which to say, okay, I must be way out of
this
line.
is post.
That's
This
a
is
really credible source.
No, this is right. No, but this is post-COVID, and I think there's a percentage of people who feel like they got out of the job market. The reports I was reading, they just feel like they can't get back in, or they don't want to get back into it. But then my question always is, so how do you survive like that? I don't understand.
Yeah, how do you survive like that? That's what makes me question the size of the number. I understand there are people who, having gotten out of work during COVID, are in no way eager to get back into it because the job was shitty, paid little, and was really. But how do you live?
Tom says, here's a comment from somebody. What do you think happened with COVID? People found ways to survive, some legal and some not so legal.
Of course, people always,
you do what you got to do to make money.
An important issue if you don't have anything to eat.
And Andrea, I'm sorry, Andrea. Elon Musk just laid off more than 70% of his workforce at Twitter. The report I heard that he did, but he said it was because a lot of those were working in social programs and he wanted to take it in a different direction. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's
there
how
have been sizable layoffs in a number of tech industries.
She's got this. Yeah, she's our recorder here. More than 11,000 laid off at Facebook. But
there have been massive layoffs in a number of large tech firms. And I'm not impressed that manufacturing is really on a hiring spree.
No, and social media is like, I see numbers just dropping. Like, people are just tired of it. I think it needs to. I know. Yeah, that might be a whole. I think people are wanting to get back to having conversations rather than an algorithm that feeds your source everything that you want. I used to get a lot of all kinds of stuff from all kinds of people. And now I find I'm just seeing less and less. So I'm not on here as much as I would. So funding rewards for these tech giants is beyond the pale. That's what Andrea is saying. I don't know if you can read those.
Yeah, I can read those. You're
Okay.
right, Andrew. I like it.
So tell
So
talk to me about with the mental illness issue. What do you think we could do to like a small thing or a big thing, but something that's really doable to kind of hit that end of it? Because it seems to me, even since the pandemic, we have even more people falling into that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the same stresses that cause people to be unemployed, we discussed this before. There's lots of things going on and none of them seem to be going well. And that makes more people crack.
Yeah.
I'm trying to block this light behind my head here.
You're doing a good. You've done a pretty good job the whole time.
I'm trying. The problem with the question is small things I don't think are going to address a very big problem.
Right.
For example, in Oregon, we have a state mental hospital. It is completely full of clients who are there on criminal referrals. That is to say, someone has been arrested, they are deemed too mentally ill to stand trial, they are sent to the state mental hospital to get fixed enough so that they can stand trial. They can only be held for 180 days.
Wow.
Because they have a right not to be held involuntarily, which is another question we could talk about. But we might find some agreement there. Consequently, the state mental hospital is jam-packed full of these folks because curing mental illness so that you're now
180 days.
in 180 days, yeah, you can trank them to the gills so they won't act out in court. But in terms of being able to participate in their defense, maybe not so much. But as a result, all of the civil commitments where people are being committed because they need to be involuntarily put into a mental institution.
Right.
Those go to the private hospitals because the state one's full. The private hospitals say, we're not getting funded for this, and we are flowing out the doors. And they went to court and blocked it. Well, what this means, if you have someone you know who is mentally ill and not able to care for themselves and getting in constant trouble because they can't negotiate society's rules,
Right.
and they don't think well at all, where it's available for them.
Yeah.
One place, two places. Two places will guarantee they will provide services. The jail, which thanks to Byron Trapp, when he was sheriff here, he hired 5 psych workers to work with the inmates. He says 40% of our population are diagnosed mentally ill and another 40% are undiagnosed. And that's about right.
Right.
There's
So Byron actually hired people to come in and help.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Byron is a Republican. Okay. I endorsed him. I gave him my endorsement for election. He asked me for it. And then when I applied for a position on the police commission, he sent a letter backing me. Okay.
That's how it's done.
Exactly who I was politically. We respect each other a lot. Byron put that in, but I went to the Eugene Police Citizens Academy where one officer showed us a graph with the chart for mental hospital. And I can't go the right direction on this screen. Mental hospital admissions going way down and jail admissions going way up. And you can see the lines cross. And I said, unless we do something about the mental health availability, facilities, staffing, takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
These numbers you're going to have them in the jail or on the streets. We have the choice, and it's cheaper.
Which is what's happening.
Which is, of course, what's happening. And of course, people who are mentally ill on the streets scare people sometimes because they don't act as you'd expect. And some of them are loud and some of them are very unhappy. I got to tell you a story. It's in bad taste. Can you bear it?
Yeah.
When I
Oh,
was
God,
on
yeah.
the ride along with a police officer the other day. I did a shift with a patrol officer. And we were driving down 7th, and he started to pull over, and I didn't see what the problem was. And I realized it There was a man standing there beside 7th, very busy street, standing in front of a business with his face to the business, his trousers around his ankles, and his hands spreading his cheeks. A real asshole. And the officer just stepped out of the car. I decided I wasn't going to get out on this one. And he said, "Pull your pants up." Put his hands on his hips. And the guy grabbed his pants, grabbed whatever his possessions were, and headed off down the street. And I kidded the officer that he might have to file a use of force report just because the expression on his face retreating back. But on the other hand, it occurred to me that the gentleman who was standing there was making an editorial statement about the status of mentally ill people on the streets.
Right.
And I thought he had a point.
So what did you walk away from that with?
How very glad I am that I'm in my right mind, that I have a roof over my head, and that I am not a police officer. What a job. And that for the people out there in his condition, if they did not start out on drugs, they will be. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to escape that even for a couple of hours?
Yeah.
It's a bad situation in our society. The bottom has been allowed to fall out. Before Reagan became president, after Reagan became president, we had a 30% cut in federal mental health spending. Boom. And there's been more since, and it's been pushed to the states. The states have no resources generally.
Well, like this year, the state has this big surplus, and everybody's talking about why can't legislators get to a point where they start?
Legislators?
Yeah.
Do we have legislators?
Yeah,
supposedly. This is news. This is
supposedly. But why isn't, I think it all, to me, sometimes it all boils down to the people. We will not pressure them and say, this is a priority. It needs to be a priority because you're not going to, we keep throwing money at some aspects of homelessness, but it's not, if you took care of the mental health aspect, in a hurry and really got people to places that were going to be helpful to them, then you're hitting the supply. And it seems to me, why won't we use, I hear people all the time with we've got this surplus in Oregon and we should use this for education. And I know we have lots of needs, but this seems like a pretty big problem in Oregon.
It's a pretty big problem. And we really need to put some serious money into it because it's not cheap.
Do you think it's because we're afraid to?
If you do it cheap, you know what happens? You get the snake pit. It's a guarantee. If you do it, okay, we don't want to spend too much on this. So that will affect the quality of the staffing, the quality of the food, the quality of the physical plant, how the people are treated, what programs are available for them. And you can call it mental health work and it will be warehousing and it will be a horror.
Right.
It really takes serious spending. And I'll tell you another one that's worse. My wife worked for 16 years in mental health. She was a drug and alcohol counselor. And at one point, she thought of transferring over to the other side, to mental health care specifically. And she was interviewed, and they asked her, "What are the rewards of your job? What do you like about this?" And you said, "What I really like about it is watching the light go on." With drug and alcohol cases. In AA, it's called the great plopping sound when you pull your head out of your ass. But when the patient wakes up and realizes, oh, I can handle this. I can deal with this with help. Okay, I get it. I see what's going on. I will change. I'm going to work on it. And they told her, don't come over to this side because you'll never see that. The light never goes on. Now, that's not entirely true. There are people who recover better, but there are many people who are mentally ill who are likely to remain in that condition and will require care. And what we want is that they get humane care, not warehousing.
Well, I have a brother-in-law who's disabled, and lives in a group home, so it's funded by the state, all that kind of stuff. And you can't even get the state to pay these folks who work with these people. They're like nurses. I mean, really, and they're
Yes.
paid like shit, and
Yes.
they're not treated well, and they
And they
can't keep
turn over
staff
about
on.
every 18
So-
months.
So we can't even do it with people with disabilities, let alone, and
right.
that's something I think people can buy into, because it's like, okay, they were born this way. Now, have someone who's a mental illness patient who also could have been born. We don't know what causes it all the time, but there's a judgment that goes with that. And all of a sudden, if I even talk about struggling with depression, then people come on and go, "Oh, with your life, you couldn't have that." And I said, "You don't know
Cheer
about
up.
You don't know the shit about my Be happy.
Yeah.
Be
Cheer up.
happy.
Be happy.
It's like, well, if I could, I would, but I can't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so you get my point. We won't even,
Absolutely. I'm
we
with
can't
you
even take care of the
100%.
disabled, let alone these folks who are dealing with mental stuff.
People who are mentally ill, people who are addicted, people who are physically disabled, it's all disability. And
Right.
it all requires care because they are not able. And it should be decent and human care. And this requires resources. And I'm with you 100%. The legislature needs to be lobbied like hell on this issue. And it's also interconnected. If you put someone under a roof rather than on the street, their mental health will improve.
Right.
You
I
take
agree.
those stressors out of their life. You
Right.
get them addiction treatment so they have a support group and they are no longer using, and they have constant positive feedback to keep them in the right direction. You will have less mental health problems. You will have less crime problems if you do all of these three. You will need less money, the whole 9 yards. It all works together, but it's got to be,
A priority.
society has to decide, we have this. These are us. These are our people. They are us, and we need to care for them. And we then need to go to where resources exist to reallocate them.
Yeah, because look what Sponsors does. Amazing program there in Eugene, working with people getting out of prison. And I have so many friends who are ex-felons, and they've gone through that program, and it's done wonders for them because they walked with them through that process. It
When
wasn't
you
just,
have a community to support
Yep.
you. in
it wasn't
some
wham
which
bam,
way.
thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jack, I'm running out of time, but would you do this again with me?
I'd love to.
I think this is really, it's good for me. It's good for our viewers. It's good for all of us to
I've enjoyed it.
start doing our thing and coming up with some ideas. Because now it's, if Oregon could, and yet the state has no problem funding. There's comments coming in like flying through here. So, but I would love to have you back, and
I'm
and
happy
we'll
to.
just find topics and maybe have a group discussion at some point. I can put like
Sure.
6 people up here and get some different folks on there and find some common ground. I think that now I feel hopeful. For a while there, I
How
wasn't.
would you
Now
like
I
to
feel-
put on something about policing?
I think that would be really, really great to show what's going on out there, especially since you're involved and and we could get some police involved in that as well.
Absolutely. I can think of a couple of people who would be good to invite on. They have limits on what they can say publicly.
Yeah.
Like one officer told me that his deepest, strongest emotion about Ferguson was how frustrated he was that he is unable to say
Yeah.
what he feels about what that officer did,
Right.
which was just, but he can't say that publicly.
Right. I think-
But yeah, that sounds like a great show. I'm up
Okay.
for that.
All right,
Good.
Jack, we'll be in contact. Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time. All right. We'll see you later, man.
Pleasure.
All right. So that's what needs to happen. More conversations like that where we can look for answers and find things. And yeah, we're going to find differences, but that's okay. I mean, we've always had differences. It's all right. But if we can't put those aside for something to come up with some kind of ideas to do some concrete work here, it's never going to happen. And that was fun. That reminds me of my old days. I like doing that kind of stuff. All right. So I'm Rick Dancer. This is Get Real with Rick Dancer. Take that conversation, share it on your page so other people can see it. We want to thank Dr. Michael Bratland from Chris Dental for sponsoring our show, and Albert Taylor, Endless Possibilities as well. and New Leaf Hyperbarics and Wellness Center as well. Again, thank you for being here. Tomorrow night, we have a great topic. We're going to be in Helena, Montana, talking to an organization that's working with veterans to get them a community where they can feel like they're vibrant and living again. It's an exercise program, but it's bigger than that. And we're going to have a veteran on, and then the people that run the program. My hope is by showing this in Montana, maybe some people in Oregon will see this and think, hey, that's a great idea. Maybe we should start that there. The thing about what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to make the world a little bit smaller, where Montana and Oregon are not that far apart. And there's Washington and Idaho right in between. And we can start seeing good ideas from other places and start implementing them in our own state and see what happens. I think it's very hopeful and possible. All right. Have a good night. I will see you tomorrow, 5 o'clock on West Coast time, Montana time, 6 p.m. The rest of you, figure it out. Good night.